G'day everyone and welcome to Andrew's Arted Models. Today I have an old classic for you. This is the old MPC ERTL X-WING in 148-ish scale, I will say. And this is a kit that has been around for a long time. It has certainly seen some life, seen some use. You'll see heaps of builds on it online. They are everywhere. There are a number of boxes. And not to get confused, you can see the X-Wing on this one is different, so higher detail than the X-Wing on this one. So looking at the lasers, you can see those are sort of like blobs. They're not very well molded, and they've got a lot of lines on them, seam lines, whatever. It's, yeah, not very good. Believe it or not, it is exactly the same kit. So in these boxes, it is this kit. That picture you see on that one is of the snap tight version. So you will see a 172nd scale version of the X-Wing around for sale on eBay. I recommend you do not buy it. It is severely overpriced, and really the detail is just terrible. It's got raised panel lines, it's you name it, it's bad. It's a snap type model, and you know, it's a snap, they're fantastic. So it doesn't want to stay together. It's a horrid little kit. I built one of them, and pretty much when I was finished, I threw it out. That was 30 years ago. It would have been 10 when I did that. It was terrible. So if you're going to buy one of these, look for the larger ones. It has, as I say, in the box art can be misleading. So, but if it has, it's a snap on it, forget it, because you're going to be getting that one. All right. So now that part's out of the way, let's get to reviewing the nice kit. Right. MPC contains over 95 parts. Yoo-hoo! Now I have built probably close to half a dozen of these over the years. I love this kit. It is an old kit and it is showing its age. But I still have a lot of fun with it. If you want something that's really, really accurate, look at getting the Bandai 148. You pay a little bit more for it, but it's worth it. It is. The detail on the other one's great. If you can pick this up relatively cheaply, then you're onto a bargain. And I managed to snap up a couple that were reasonably priced. I missed one recently just because of the lockdown. I couldn't get my hands on it, I was crying. But yeah, no, great little kits and worth the purchase. All right, so let's start with the decals. Decals are often in these kits you'll find damage. So most of these kits have already been opened. People are taking the parts out, had a look at it. You could be the 5th, 6th owner of this kit. No one's actually gotten around to building it. Everyone's just had a rummage through it. So expect to see the decals damaged. They are on the thick side, and they go down okay. As I was saying, they are thick and they can be a little bit of trouble. But for their age, they're pretty good. The model does look a lot better if you can take the time to mask off this area and paint it. I'm sure there's probably someone selling some aftermarkets of these online somewhere. So worth having a look at. Instructions. So, with 95 parts, you're not going to expect this to be overly complex. And surprise, surprise, it's not. So, most of these parts go together fairly easily and relatively closely. You will have some gap issues on the front here between the laser and the main body of the laser. It is annoying. It is easy to fix with a bit of putty and some time and patience. But overall, most of it goes together reasonably well. Details we're saying is lacking, and that's just because of the age. But for overall assembly and the age of this kit, it was actually quite good. And it's really what made it so popular. It was an X-Wing kit. It was a lovely X-Wing kit, but it was a simple build. It was a fun build for most people. So the instructions there, not difficult at all. If this kit has one part that really lets it down, it's the cockpit, and we'll cover that. But yeah, so the cockpit assembly and the pilot are there. We have the rear of the X-Wing, putting the wings together, and landing gear option if you want it, which was a nice touch, I thought, and the display. So if you're not going to do the landing gear out, obviously you're going to need something to sit the, oh, hang on, how do we do that? Sit the X-wings on. That's terrible, isn't it? Oy, terrible, absolutely shocking. Sit the X-wing wings on apart. Yep, moving on. You get what I'm saying. The clear base, for the life of me, I've never understood why they did a 5-pointed star and then made you attach one of the 5 points for the star. It never looked good. It was always a pain in the ass, to be honest. And that stand just looks cheap and it wobbles a lot. Yeah, it is what it is. You can do with it as you will. You can replace it, upgrade it, whatever you want to do. You will find the Lucasfilm fan club and Star Wars fan club and stuff, paraphernalia in these. Sometimes you'll find little movie prints and whatnot. But let's have a look at the kit. So, moving on to the parts themselves. So we're going to start with the lasers. Now that's the landing gear there. That's 2 halves of our R2-D2, and you can see it's raised panel lines. Very simple detail, not a hell of a lot to go on. That's part of the landing gear, and the laser systems are there. So if you flip that over, you can see the part where it joins here. It's the other additional part you put on there, and you will end up with a gap between the other part and that, and it is a pain in the bum. But it is there, and you'll just have to fix it. All of these parts have flash and are quite flimsy. You will break these lasers off the X-Wing. So once you've put them on, sooner or later, you're going to move your hand across and you're going to knock it and break them off. I find, as I say, I built quite a few of these, I find the best way to secure these in place is to actually get a pin, like a sewing pin, and have half of the pin in the actual laser, and then half of the pin in the other back part that attaches to the wing. And that really makes it a lot more sturdy and a lot harder to knock them off. Definitely worth a try. So that's that part there, or those parts there. Really simple, not a heck of a lot to them. Let's move on to some of the clear parts straight out of the bag, straight off the bat rather. So as I was saying, this particular one has been opened, and so a lot of the clear parts are scratched. That's to be expected, but there's not irreparable. They're easy enough to fix for the most part. You get a little X-Wing sign or Star Wars sign with the X-Wing fighter written on it, which isn't too bad. And that's that part we're talking about there. Oh, hang on a second. I told you I've done a few and I did that wrong. That's that part we're talking about there. It's, yeah, it is what it is. The rear of the canopy is very basic. The detail on it does not stand up well. Certainly the Bandai one will be much better. But you can try to fix some of that detail with a little bit of very, very, very thin plastic card. You just got to be careful gluing it on there because you don't want to have the clear glass go foggy and then ruin the rest of the canopy for you. And then that's the stand we were talking about. With here, it's quite rigid when it's in there, but when you have the model on it at the top, it really waves. It's kind of strange. I don't like that at all. Wings. So these are the interior of the wings, inside of the wings. That's the leading edge, and that is one of the engines. So you can see the detail on these is quite simple, but it is, at least for the most part, recessed panel lines or mold lines, and reasonably well done. There aren't a huge amount of sink marks on these parts or anything like that, just a bit of flash you need to clean up. And I often check the back as well when I put them together, because you get injector pin marks behind, but some of them can be a bit higher and stick out. Now, what these marks are, I have no idea. There's imperfections in the mold. They haven't bothered polishing up that part of the surface because it's not going to be seen. It's probably just to make the mold a bit cheaper when they're making it. There's not much on that one, so they're definitely raised. So where they've come from, I don't know, but that is probably the likely cause. And we'll just check the other side. So they're missing those as well. Really interesting. They're definitely raised on the other one. And these parts, as I was saying, because this is an open kit, a lot of these parts have come off the sprues, and but they are all there. I have triple checked them. And these are your engines, so those go inside the engine nozzles there, and these are for the lasers. Very simple. The injector pin marks in there, what a nightmare. Previously, I have tried to sand them down. This is prior to when I had a motor tool. I used to try and sand them out, and it just never happened. But if you put a black paint in there, like a matte black, it actually hides them reasonably well. So why you would have them there as opposed to the backside, I have no idea. But yeah, it is what it is. And it was the same. This was a really cheap kit when it came out. It wasn't an expensive kit. And that's why I built so many of them as a kit, because you could pick them up for next to nothing. They are overpriced today, but if you can find them at a reasonable price, then why not? The wings, so with the wings in the locked position, there are little tabs that go on either side to lock them in place. And I'll show you on the other side, there you go, the receiver's on that side there, so it literally locks the wings in place. On the top of the model, all I really do is just sand the raised detail off there, fill it, it's gone, and then hide it under here as well. I mean, it's when you put the underbit in there, or put the bottom part on there, it's going to hide it fairly well. But you can see, I mean, the detail in here is pretty lacking. There's not a huge amount of detail in there anyway, even on the Bandai ones, but you get the idea. Moving on. Now, this is the base of the main body, and the molding on these is quite good. I actually really liked this when I was a kid. Some of the panel lines are a bit deeper than others, but overall it is not bad. And when you compare it next to the 1/72 scale, it is a gem. It really stands up well. Flash on the kit, yeah, a little bit on this part, not a huge amount. The biggest thing you're going to find is around the front here. As I was saying, some of these panel lines are deeper than others, and there's a fair lip on some of these parts. So pre-sanding, a light pre-sanding prior to is a good idea. You get the same issue in here as well. So definitely give it a quick sand. And we're just going to skip over the other part of the wing. You've seen that already. And excuse the rattling in the box. And this is the top part of the main body, and that looks like an X-Wing to me. It is pretty good. I do like this kit. And you can see raised, so just tidy them up a tiny bit, and they'll come up well. But you see the light just hitting the raised edges there. It is just part of the joys of making this kit, shall we say? It's just part of the age of the kit, really. The rear of the cockpit there looks quite good. It's just that clear part. But once it's put in there, you're not going to see too much. If you really want to put the extra detail in there, yeah, you can, but yeah, not to worry. There are always, I've never seen one without huge gouges in the side here from where it's come off the sprue. So you can see there's a fairly big dent there. And that's going to require some putty, and often you'll find one up the front as well on the bit of the nose. That one's not too bad, but often you'll find there's a chunk out there where it's come off the sprue as well. Moving on to some of the other parts. So here we have the back of the lasers, or there's little additional parts for the lasers. We've got the parts of the rear of the wings. We have the engines, and obviously the ones that are hollow are meant to go on the bottom, because that's if you want the landing gear option. And engines again. We'll show you the top deck there. So that's where your little R2 unit goes. Now this part is actually quite interesting. As it slides, you can slide it in and out of the back here. And I believe that's probably to make the R2 unit a bit easier to get out, because he sits in there. But that's how you go with that. The models themselves, the engines themselves, once again, same deal. And we're almost finished here. Let's have a look at the canopy. So you can see all the scratches in that. That's going to need to be fixed. But a bit of polishing compound will clean that up. And there's, you just got to be careful taking the edges off with these so you don't damage them. And then we have the rear of the ship. And that's quite simple as well. So nicely detailed, not a huge amount, but for the age of the kit, really nice. So let's have a look at the last part, and there's lots of little pieces that we haven't covered because they've all fallen off the sprues, but you get the idea. This is the cockpit, and the cockpit is pretty poor. really not all that good. Now, back in the 90s, there was a company selling a cockpit detail sets for these, and they really were not much chop. And I managed to find one. I got my hands on one thanks to a builders forum on Facebook, and managed to find one in Canada, and the gentleman was quite happy to send it to me, which was really nice of him. He's painted this black, so it was originally just a resin grey or white there, and you can see the detail I've put on the back there. For whatever reason, that is no longer part of the kit, so that's probably broken off there. But you can see the detail on there is exactly the same. They've just added a couple little hoses, and in the interior part here, they've actually changed the layout of the cockpit. So that's a lot more accurate than that is. It's still not great, but it's certainly more detailed than the original kit. Now, I sort of got this, and I was planning to put this into a display piece, but I'm thinking I might take this out and make my own, to be honest. So, is it worth buying one of these if you see it? Probably not. It's just not much chop. But that's neither here nor there. It's certainly better than the kit part. And let's have a look at the last bit, which is the box. So we're done. MPC ERTL X-WING, original X-WING from the early days of modeling. Should you get one? Yeah, why not? If you can pick one up at a reasonable price, and I mean reasonable as in under 50 US, anything over that is really just extortion. These kits were never that expensive when they came out, and even adjusting for inflation, they still wouldn't be 50 bucks. So I wouldn't be spending that. Detail wise, they're quite good. So if you can pick them up reasonably, have a blast, have a bit of fun. They are a fun build kit. Are they the most accurate X-WING out there? Hell no. Certainly the Bandai ones are good, and I would steer clear of the snap tight ones if you see them. So remember, as I was saying earlier on, if it's a snap, it's crap. Don't worry about it. Forget it. Move on. Seriously, you'd be much better buying off the Bandai 1/72 scale kit than buying the 1/72 scale snap version of this. It's horrid. But for one of these, definitely they are fun, and it looks great when it's finished. They look fantastic when they're done. So definitely recommend getting one. Right, we're going to call that a day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions about this kit, please let me know, and I'll happily answer any questions I can. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, we do a monthly model giveaway. So I give away a model kit once a month to subscribers, and you will see the video launched at the beginning of the month, and the draw is done at the end of the month. So keep an eye out for that. We've got plenty more models coming, plenty more videos coming, and yeah, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.